A killer chicken. Now I've seen it all.
Anybody who's ever played Irrational's Bioshock Infinite will be immediately familiar with the opening sequence of Atomic Heart. You arrive at an idyllic utopian city by boat, a city that happens to be floating amongst the clouds of a post-World War II landscape dominated by Soviet science, before the short guided tour takes a turn for the worst. While Atomic Heart swaps Infinite's early 20th century Americana for a 1950s depiction of communist Russia, developer Mundfish wears its inspirations on its sleeve right from the get-go. Unfortunately, Atomic Heart never truly builds on the solid foundation such an introduction sets up, resulting in an uneven adventure where the ideas behind its world are ultimately stronger than the final game that takes place within it. Now, before we crisp up some critters, I'd like to mention that this review was originally written by Ben Kerry and once again spun into video format by me. Once the game's intro moves on from pure walking simulator to hectic first-person shooter, Atomic Heart settles into a rhythm pretty quickly. You'll frequently plunge yourself into underground facilities to progress the storyline, where various puzzle rooms and combat scenarios play out from a first-person perspective. These dungeon areas are more puzzle-orientated to begin with, although combat does play a part from minute 1, before they absolutely become more bang bang bullet bullet gun by the end of Atomic Heart's roughly 15-hour adventure.
Take that! Each and die!
Now, you may have seen pre-release material showcasing an open world full of aggressive robot creatures out to spoil the party. While such scenarios do exist in the game, Atomic Heart's structure is tough to wrap your head around. The open area segments almost serve as stepping stones between the game's main dungeon-led missions, and sadly, they're a huge missed opportunity when you consider how intriguing the game's world is. We're not out here saying we wanted a Ubisoft collectathon or anything, but Mundfish just hasn't packed enough meaningful content into Atomic Heart's open world to justify much exploration beyond moving to the next main mission. We did do a bit of exploration for the purpose of this review and found little beyond some unnecessary combat encounters and resources for upgrading weapons or abilities. In truth, it just wasn't worth wasting the resources needed to successfully navigate Atomic Heart's overworld, beyond using it as a vehicle to head to the next main waypoint. Having said that, if you're into your brutalist Soviet architecture and how the game meshes this aesthetic with a high-tech robot-led society, then maybe it is worth a little bit of a wander from time to time. Again, you won't find much that the game's introduction and main missions don't already show off, but we really did just enjoy taking in the world of Atomic Heart. The game's retro-future style is downright beautiful, and watching on as the world's suspended rail line snakes and weaves through the mountainous environment is a sight to behold. Just watch out for them sneaky robots. They ain't the type for a casual stroll among the hills.
Let me go, you son of a bitch!
Right, back to the meat of Atomic Heart's main campaign, its story-led dungeons. This is where you'll spend the majority of your time with Mundfish's adventure, and they're largely enjoyable, if not a bit repetitive, come your adventure's closing stages. The facilities typically take shape as multi-room dungeons featuring hectic combat sections, mini boss fights, and some light puzzling here and there.
It worked. 2 more left. Gee, are you sure?
Which we would have liked given the game's overall focus on shooting. And in fact, they're largely omitted from the game's final few missions. As for the combat itself, Atomic Heart's first-person shooting is enjoyable when everything works as it should do. We found the early game pump-action shotgun useful throughout. Combining it with the game's freezing or telekinesis powers gave off some serious Bioshock plasmid vibes. There are plenty of other weapons and abilities to get stuck into, and we could definitely see ourselves employing a fairly different approach to fighting when replaying the game. However, there are a few slight caveats to combat. We plowed through our adventure at a brisk pace, and for large parts we didn't have the resources to craft new weapons, or buy different abilities from the game's various vending machines. Oh god, don't remind me of the vending machines.
No need to fight back, sugar. Oh, you're gonna love this.
We scooped up as many bits and pieces as we could find using our glove's very satisfying way of looting, but it might be worth taking a bit more time to scour every nook and cranny if you want to experiment with Atomic Heart's full arsenal. Also, on console at least, some of the game's controls just simply don't work. Aiming down sight is completely pointless because some sort of aim acceleration throws just everything off, and the fact that you can't adjust aim sensitivity on its own means there's no way to fix the issue at launch. Also, Atomic Heart features weapon cartridges that apply a modification to your guns, and we found no actual way of being able to use these things. You'll find them, they appear in your inventory, but unlike the game's other items, there's no use or equip option. We hope this is a bug that's fixed shortly because it prevented us from getting stuck into the game's weapon mod system. As previously mentioned, these dungeons are where Atomic Heart usually progresses its main storyline. The game's various cutscenes often appear here, and are impressively put together, giving the game a AAA sheen throughout. Because of our overall intrigue with the game's setup, world, and the premise of the Russian robot apocalypse, we found ourselves suitably wrapped up in Atomic Heart's main campaign. Even with our attention largely held throughout, the game's overall plot doesn't really make that much sense beyond the Soviet Union pushes science too hard and the game's machinery starts to take over. Your main character is wrapped up in all of this in ways we won't spoil here, but the plot is messy, and we'd have preferred a much larger focus on what's going on in the world rather than the protagonist's own involvement. Oh, and it's worth mentioning that you'll have to get used to him, also known as P3, shouting "crispy critters" every time he gets annoyed at something.
Crispy critters.
And he really does do it a lot.
Am I gonna turn into a crispy critter if I stay in here too long?
A lot.
Crispy critters?
They're most certainly crispy, Major.
See what I mean?
So, what do you think?
Crispy critters.
Quiet, damn it! There's something dangerous up ahead.
And that's my fucking line.
Indeed.
A quick note on the overall performance here, Atomic Heart is gorgeous and runs very well on the Xbox Series X, in our experience at least. We came across an odd stutter here and there, and we even got stuck in the environment once or twice, but there's nothing major. Mundfish has done a great job at pulling all of this together on a technical level, and if the team can iron out some of those control issues we mentioned, it'll be an even more impressive feat in this regard.
Harmless my ass.
So, where do we even start summing this one up? A recommendation definitely depends on your own interest with the world of Atomic Heart. The game's premise remains intriguing throughout, and its main missions provide some great combat scenarios to get stuck into, especially when it comes to using powers and the skill tree system to create character builds. Yet, the game's overworld is largely skippable, which is a huge bummer. And it's a shame that the main storyline does little to enhance the incredibly interesting world Mundfish has created. Atomic Heart is well worth a play for the immersive FPS fanatics out there, but it's wise to temper your expectations when names like Bioshock or Doom are being thrown around in comparison. Atomic Heart is a solid alternative history shooter, but it's gonna take more than building an interesting world to become a true great in the genre. And there we have it. Let me know your thoughts on Atomic Heart in the comments below, and as usual, I'd love it if you could slap that like and subscribe to keep yourself up to date with all things Xbox. Before you head off, check out one of the 2 crispy critters being suggested to you. As for now, Craig signing off.